Hello, lovely people. I have some new glasses. I'm very excited to have new glasses. It's taken me a minute to be able to pick them up. Um, kind of feel like a mess today, a mess this week. Is this even on? Yeah, it is. Okay. Having difficulties. Anywho, so I wanted to do this live stream for, I guess the main reason is because of my friend Andy. And if you saw my community tab, then you may know what happened to him. My friend Andy is no more. He's no longer with us, and that hit me pretty hard. Hey, Monica. I'm going to say I got to look on the calendar. I woke up on the 8th, and my husband had posted something on Facebook about the oddest duck. And I read that post, and I'm like, he's talking about Andy, because I always referred to Andy as the oddest duck, because I mean Andy was extremely odd. Oh, thank you so much, Monica. And so I guess, to kind of get you to where we ended up, I'm going to kind of, tell the story of Andy as I know it. Andy, my friend, and gosh, I didn't even remember to bring in any tissues or anything, because I may even lose it because it hit me really hard. So after I saw my husband's post, this was before my husband went back to work, which, by the way, the restaurant shut down because somebody tested positive for COVID. So, there's that too going on. But anyway, I want to say it was probably in 2013, because it's not like, when you meet people, you don't go mark it down on the calendar or anything, right? And at the time, I lived in downtown Houston. And I've kind of told this tale before of where I lived. I lived in a place called the Rice. At the time, it was managed by, it was Post Rice Lofts. Now the building has been sold, and there's another entity that manages it. And as far as I'm concerned, they destroyed the historical integrity of it, because it was such a cool building. Anyway, this building is also where John F. Kennedy stayed the night before he was assassinated, because it used to be a hotel before it became, apartment lofts. It was empty for many, 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 many years, and it was refurbished back in the 90s. So this building, if you will, I'm going to try to describe it, because there's like these three towers. And on one end, there is a restaurant called Sambuca. It is a restaurant and jazz bar. Then there's also Azuma's. Azuma's is a sushi restaurant. And there's Minuti, which is a little coffee shop. And then there's a Chipotle on the other end. And then around the corner on Main Street, because the streets are Texas and Main in downtown Houston, there's an Irish pub called Shay's. There used to be a bar upstairs called State Bar. This is the actual property when Texas was its own nation, where the capital started out at, or it was at one of the locations. Anyway, so when I lived there, I had the dogs. I didn't always have tamale like when I first moved down there, but I had chalupa and tamale. So I'd get home from work, and this was back when I was doing instructional design for a big oil company here in Houston. Imagine that, working for an oil company in Houston. I know, crazy. But I would walk the dogs. And I would go and walk the dogs, and along the sidewalk, because, you're just walking on the city streets because it's downtown. And I would see people sitting outside of Shay's. And one day I started talking to this guy because tamale reminded him of his little dog that he didn't have anymore. And this guy ended up being a really good friend of mine. His name is Justin, and he's just precious. And he's how I ended up meeting my husband. He's how I ended up meeting all these people who had worked at Sambuca. Because back at this time, my husband was a server at Sambuca. I didn't really know him. I didn't really go there. Hello, Danielle. I didn't really, I just went and worked. I hung out. I went to Azuma's, and I went to the different happy hours for the building and everything. But, I wasn't hanging out at Shay's yet, but I started to, because I met my friend Justin. And, sooner or later, I just started meeting a lot of people. And the people who worked at Sambuca, that was their watering hole. That's where they would go to after their shift was over. And that's how I met Andy. Andy was a server at Sambuca as well. Now I'm going to tell you something to give you an idea, because he was so precious. But okay, how can I put this politely so that all right, so he would do some shifts because they wore aprons, and because he was just a wackadoo in the most lovely way, just a wackadoo. But he did this on occasion where his junk, if you know what I mean, because he's a male, and so his male anatomy would be like out, but it would be hidden by the apron. And he would do that. Hey, AJ, he would do that like just to, I guess tell the other servers, and he would just tell them his, thing is out, and people would just kind of look at him oddly. And he also because, as a server, sometimes you get crappy tips, right? And he would say, thanks, fucks. And he's saying F-U-C-K-S, but it kind of sounds like folks, so they didn't really know. But he would just have all kinds of little quirky things. And when I'd walk by with the dogs, inevitably, it didn't matter if he was working behind the bar, because he had bartended also, or if he was inside. If he saw me, he would race outside and come out there and hug me. And Andy gave the most amazing hugs. I mean, when he hugged you, it was like full on love. And I put on my community tab this week that I'm changing my sign off to be "You're beautiful and I love you." And I'm going to just lose it. That's because Andy told that to everyone. Anyone Andy met, he was just full of life, full of joy. And he would let everybody know how important he thought they were and how beautiful that they were. And that's something that I want to bring out, because I don't think we have enough love and kindness in the world. I don't think there ever can be enough love and kindness in the world. And one of the things I try to tell you guys in my videos is to approach people who are still in MLM with love and kindness, because they are people, and they just happen to sign up for something that they believed in, that they think is going to help. They don't realize, it's really crappy or anything. So Andy also, more of my backstory, because some of you may have heard me talk about having breast cancer. And I got married in 2015. And I wasn't married even a year. And I came up with breast cancer. And that's part of the way I ended up getting involved with MLM afterwards. But this is really hard. Going through that, because I don't have, sisters. I don't have a mom. My mom's not with me. I'm not close with my extended family at all or anything. And there were 3 people who came over to help me, and Andy was one of them. Andy would come over and walk the dogs, but Andy also, he was an incredible musician, incredible. And he played the classical guitar. And he came over, and I was feeling like crap. I mean, my boobs, sorry, but I was in so much pain. And he just sat there with me. And he would just play, or he'd watch The Walking Dead, because he knows I love The Walking Dead, and he likes The Walking Dead too. He did. And so he was just always so much fun. And then when we'd get down at Shay's at the bar, because I stopped drinking after I went through cancer, but before all of that, I was drinking down there. And hang on, I know Ada's going to come in, but I told her that, and where did my glasses go? Here's my new glasses. You're stuck on the junk outside. Andy was just a card. Okay. All right. So there. All right. Okay, cool. All right, Ada, I'll be sending that link to you after I tell this story. Anyway, so Andy would say the most random things, and he was so intense. And he would say random crazy things, kind of like that was his litmus test to see if you could get him, if you could like kind of, follow his logic. And sometimes he would just scream like Argentina for no apparent reason. Pterodactyls, no apparent reason. I mean, just weird, bizarre things. His favorite bands are Tool and Rush. And all I can say is that he was full of love and life, but he was also troubled, He didn't have an easy life. As a server, it's not like you get benefits and stuff, right? So, I mean, there were times when he had a broken collarbone and he worked with a broken collarbone. There were all kinds of things that he did. He somehow just kind of kept going through everything. And I haven't seen Andy. I guess the last time I saw him is after we moved out of the Rice. And he came over when we lived in Midtown, and he needed to get caught up on The Walking Dead on whatever season it was at the time. And that's probably the last time that I saw him. But my husband would go downtown because, my husband has different hours than me. And it's like by the time that he wants to go down there, I'm like ready for bed. And every time he saw Andy, Andy would say, "Tell Alonda I love her." And he would send me a hug every single time. And so that's the kind of guy that he was. But like I said, he was troubled. I mean, he had highs, extreme highs, extreme lows, and he was kind of all over the place. He drank a lot, he smoked a lot, he did other things as well. Like I said, he had his demons. We all have demons, right? And so I don't really know exactly what happened, and it's not like I'm going to ask someone. A couple of years ago, though, he met someone who worked at Sambuca. Oh my gosh, so many people have worked at Sambuca that we know. It's just absolutely crazy. Anyway, the night that he met this girl, and it was the day that he met her was the day that the Astros won the World Series. She told that story at the funeral. And I'm like, holy crap. And she didn't know anything about how to do anything at Sambuca as a server. And Andy was running around Sambuca with a conch shell and blowing into it and all over the place. He was doing the conch shell later that night, like outside at Shay's and everything. I mean, just being Andy, just being himself. So that's how she got to know him. And she was like, okay, I'm going to still steer clear of him. Well, they ended up obviously dating, falling in love, and they got married. And it's been a little over 2 years. So I don't know exactly what his state of mind was, but I know he wasn't in a good place. And I know from talking to our other good friend, Christopher, that I guess apparently even before they got married, I mean, he was like dealing with a lot of stuff. So the week of his demise, the cops were called out there 3 separate times for domestic disturbance. Now, Andy was not a violent person in terms of he was not going to, like beat his wife or anything. It was more like stuff that was going on with him. And I don't know what that was. And it was on this Sunday, the last Sunday. I guess his wife ended up leaving because I think they thought it'd be safer. And the cops were called out again. And Andy and their animals were inside their home. And at some point, tear gas was thrown in through the windows and everything. And they found him in the closet. And he had already pulled the trigger. And so I don't know if there's something that could have been done, but I do know my friend was hurting a lot because, my husband has this whole idea of this alternate universe that is like a year later and we're all at Shay's and Andy's there. And he tells us the story of how a year ago he nearly killed himself. And he's so glad that he didn't. And I wish that was a story that he would tell, but he's not here. And the thing is, Andy didn't think that anybody really cared. He didn't really think, I guess he had friends from, what I've been able to piece together. And when I found out about this, because, I pretty much was sure when I read that morning, that post, that it was something to do with Andy. And I thought maybe the house had caught on fire and he couldn't get out. And I'm trying to work at home and not knowing what's going on. And when my husband woke up, I found out more of just exactly what I told you. Oh, and I've been really not the same since then. We did go, okay, so Shay's is downtown. The same people have two other bars. They're both kind of like in the Montrose area, but one's called Johnny McElroy's and the other one's just McElroy's. So we went to McElroy's and met some of our friends there. Everybody knew Andy. Either they had worked with him at Sambuca, or Truck Yard is the last place that he worked at. We all knew Andy. So we all kind of just, hung out. I did a shot of Fireball because Andy used to just bring shots of Fireball to me on occasion, because that's kind of the drink that we did. We all did Fireball. My husband didn't even like it, but he would do it. And then, the wake was on Tuesday, and going to that, I saw all the pictures of Andy, and we still have an event in Facebook, and there's all these pictures and little short videos and everything. And it is just heartbreaking seeing him from a baby to the man he became, knowing the pain that he was in. And I say all of this because when I was talking to my husband, I know what it's like to think no one gives a damn, that, no one really cares. And if you are feeling like, you're troubled in some way, because we're all going through something pretty major right now is going on in the world. There's several things going on in the world. And if you think people don't care, you would probably be absolutely shocked how many people's lives you actually have touched. I know myself, I told my husband, I'm like, well, if I wasn't here tomorrow, it probably really, it wouldn't make a difference, because I pretty much feel like a shut in. I don't really go anywhere very often or anything, And he just kind of looked at me oddly. And so I can kind of relate to that. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are like just hurting from everything that's going on. And it's really hard when the world is so in such disarray of so many different things going on. And so today I'm going to now invite Ada to come in so that we can talk to you a bit about depression, anxiety, because you may be feeling that. And I mean, I know I am. I know I am not doing well mentally at all. One, because of what happened to Andy, and then the other things going on in the world. I feel very raw, very unsure, very afraid, so many things. So let me get this invite to her. So give me a minute and let me put on my glasses. And I may start crying again because, I miss Andy so much. Even though I hadn't really seen him, I miss him so much. Okay. So I hope that she got that. So if she did, then she'll be popping on. So Ada, I know AJ, let me know that you got that or something. I sent it over on Facebook. But, I guess more than anything, I really want us all to really think about the lives that we have touched, even if you haven't talked to somebody for a number of years. And now then we were over at McElroy's. Our buddy Russell was there. I hadn't seen Russell in a long time. He used to work at Sambuca's, of course, too. And I love Russell. I think he's a great dude. And he said something like that. He's like, even if I haven't talked to you, in 2, 3, 5 years, it doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean I don't care. And I want you guys to think about that too, of people that you know. Because, life is hard. It's, we all go through ups and downs of everything. And I know it can feel like you're absolutely alone in how you're feeling. And I think about that with Andy. I can't imagine what was going through his mind to be holed up in that closet, hearing the glass shatter, the tear gas coming in, because Andy loves animals. Hence, taking my dogs out, hanging out with me and my dogs. To be at that place where he didn't see that there was an alternative. Now, I don't know if some of the things that got to him, which may be getting to you too, because, if you're in the service industry, you haven't been working for a while. And some people do get unemployment, some people don't. It just kind of depends. There's like some real gray areas there, because oftentimes as a server, especially if you get a lot of like cash tips, you can't prove that income necessarily. So I don't know if finances were a part of it, or just, the pressure from everything, because we are just living in a pressure cooker. I mean, it's just everything just feels so intense. And you just don't know if, what else could happen. There's fires, there's all kinds of stuff. Did Ada get that? My browser's being, okay. So her browser is being fussy. Okay, trying to go back and forth. And I am not a mental health expert, far from it. One of the things, I guess several of the things that I expected when this whole pandemic stuff first started, I knew there'd be an uptick in suicide. And I mean, we have not seen numbers like that. I knew there'd be an uptick in domestic violence. I knew there'd be an uptick in crime. I knew there'd be an uptick in different things because of the massive amount of pressure and stress that everybody is under, And the thing is it's not like we don't have an end in sight. So, I mean, how is that jacking with everyone? I know with me sometimes it's like, holy moly. Now, most recently this past week, I'd be working. And I mean, I would literally just start sobbing. And it was because I was thinking about Andy. That I so wanted to be able to see him. When we went to Shay's after his funeral, which, by the way, all of the pallbearers wore Astros jerseys, and he loved the Astros. Oh, there's Ada. He loved the Astros. Hey, darling.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ada is an expert in mental health, unlike myself. And so I think I asked you to, because I was thinking about depression and anxiety, and there's probably other things that are associated with all of that. I didn't even say, hey, yeah, let's talk about those things. But I do know that people are feeling some kind of way with everything going on. And then when you have an event like what I've gone through, it seems like that might even heighten everything even more in you. And I don't know. I don't even know how to start a conversation with you.
And that is okay. Did you, out of respect for what has happened, because for you, I understand this isn't just about the global situation, or even just the situation locally. This is very present and very personal for you. And so I wondered, did you want me to speak about, it sounds like Andy had bipolar disorder, if you wanted me to speak about that specifically, or if you wanted me to talk more about general situation with, with pandemic and with anxiety. Which would you rather that I do?
Maybe a bit, because Andy was never diagnosed for anything, you know,
Mm.
but I have often thought, you know, that it has seemed like just knowing him that possibly, yeah, you know, some bipolar and a lot of self-medicating, trying to deal with everything of his emotions, you know,
Yeah.
and he really did kind of live on the edge, if that, you know what I mean? He just kind of was there. But,
Hmm.
and, you know, and I think that I think a lot of times people who do suffer with bipolar don't know how to get help, or maybe even feel like they shouldn't get help, but because they're like they're so good at some point, and then they're so not so good at other points.
And that's part of what makes bipolar difficult for the person who is living with it and for people around them, is because the highs are so enjoyable to a point. Um, and it always seems that, the after the lows and all of this, it's very easy for someone with bipolar who's kind of coming up out of that low to think, that's behind me now. I am better now, and this is it. This is going to be, I'm going to be fine. Which, I mean, I wish that were the way it was. That would be great, but unfortunately, that's not how it is. But it makes it really tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And I know that a lot of people try to help him, but you know, I think some of it also goes back to, again, being a server. When you don't have, you know, health insurance and stuff, how do you afford, you know, getting any kind of help?
Yeah, and that surely is preventive mental help is so lacking in our country right now. Um, the prevailing mindset seems to be, wait until it's a huge disaster. Wait until you are suffering profoundly enough to qualify for a formal diagnosis, or else you don't get seen. And if you do have a diagnosis, so be it. But much could be improved, I think, if people went in for regular mental health screenings. Now, that, of course, like you said, would require health insurance first of all. But if people went in just like they go in for it, to their primary care physician for a physical, right, for checkup. If you went in and saw, psychiatrist or, mental health professional, and it wasn't to get a diagnosis, maybe nothing's even wrong, you're just going in for a checkup, many people, I think, would be saved a lot of grief if that were the case.
Well, I know the company I work for, because I think more companies are offering, like, you know, telemedicine, and it's not like
Mm.
you're dealing with a psychiatrist. I really don't know who you're dealing with, some kind of counselor of some sort, but somewhere to call in and kind of, you know, have that touch point of someone, like if
Mm.
you are feeling something. It seems like at least that those are starting to be more prevalent or popular. Do you know anything about that?
I Not as such. I haven't had the experience of working with one of those companies. I think it's great that they're offering that, especially in these times. I've seen them I've seen them advertised, but I haven't gone down that particular rabbit hole.
And that's really something I should probably call them, because I could probably use that right now. But you know, sometimes you think, I'm good. I can tough it out. And I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying, with you just until it gets to be too much.
Yeah, and what with everything going on right now, I'm kind of it looks like it's almost too much now, if I may say, and I agree with you, like sooner rather than later. And yeah, if it has occurred to you that this would be a useful thing for you to reach out and do, please do. Because just like with, and again, okay, mental health, you know this, it's quote unquote invisible, right? And we are all kind of told, we're given this message, like you said, tough it out, soldier on, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, etc., etc. But the fact is that it's more like a toothache and less like a skinned knee. You know, a skinned knee, you can kind of get up and rub some dirt on it, I guess, and walk it off. But a toothache, no amount of walking off is going to fix that. And once it gets to a certain point, no matter how good care you take of yourself and your teeth, at a certain point, it's just not wise to let it go. You know?
Yeah. I think that
And
at least I know here in Houston that there are, and I don't know what they are, but I know there are some community services that people can reach out to, be it, you know, like I said, I don't know all that where they are, but I know we do have some. I know we have the Montrose Health Clinic, and there's just like different places where people can go. I guess in larger cities, there's going to be more resources than at some of the smaller ones.
Yeah, definitely. Which is one of the nice things about having online access. Again, I can't vouch for them because I don't know how good they are, but yeah, you are definitely correct that as far as live resources go, bigger cities definitely have more of them.
And Joseph did say, Joseph made the comment that he's worked at a few companies that have had those plans of the telehealth type stuff. So let's kind of like swing this over to more generalized type stuff, because I can keep talking about Andy and just, you know, absolutely lose it here. We're like, you know, all night long. But I also want people to keep all of this in mind for themselves, you know, because it seems like because the world is I don't know what to call it other than disarray. Just everything is just so topsy-turvy, and we're all going through it. So it doesn't even matter that, you know, if it's a healthcare professional, if it's your dentist, if it's, you know, your minister, or if it's your next door neighbor, we're all feeling this. And sometimes I think, well, who do you really turn to for help? How are they dealing with anxiety? And does anybody even have any answers for anxiety or depression or anything right now? Because all of this is so unprecedented. So let's talk a little bit about anxiety and what that might look like and how it manifests itself under these challenging, difficult, unprecedented times.
Absolutely. So when there is a disruption to one's personal narrative, that by nature causes anxiety. So if and it could be a very simple disruption, easily cleared away, or it could be a massive disruption like we've got going on right now, right? So a simple disruption is if you had a job where you had a commute, right? And then you go out and your car is a flat tire. This has disrupted your narrative. This has disrupted the track that the future was going to go on. And so you have to deal with the uncertainty. Who do I call? How do I resolve this? How's my boss going to take it? Okay. And for most people, that's resolved pretty quickly, but still you have a moment of anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen or maybe how to resolve this. Maybe you're one of those lucky people who's just like, shrug, I can change my own tire and still be at work on time. If so, go you. That's more than I can do. But let's say that it's a big disruption in the narrative, like the COVID-19 situation. Well, now nobody really knows when this is going to end. There's a plan, but it's already been revised several times, and it seems to be quite different depending on what state you're in. And so there's this an unknown future, big unknown future. And that's really anxiety inducing because our brains like planning for the future. And right now the future is this cloudy haze of anxiety. And so even if you do not have an anxiety disorder or a mood disorder or what have you, you're going to be anxious, quite possibly. And if you do have a mental disorder, mental or emotional mood disorder, it's going to be exacerbated by that, most likely. The other thing is that a lot of people are experiencing anxiety these days as intense dreams. I don't know if anybody here in the chat or if you yourself have experienced this, but many people are having really vivid dreams when they get to sleep. And it might be, again, in our dreams, the brain goes through a bunch of different functions and does a bunch of different things with neurotransmitters and all that. But one of the things it does is run over possible future scenarios and try to plan for those, or go back over the day and, try to fix that in your memory, etc. It's like a filter and a plan ahead. But right now, it's really hard to do that. And so a lot of people are getting really, really vivid dreams, and that can be a manifestation of anxiety. Insomnia, if you can't get to sleep at all, or hypersomnia, wanting to sleep all the time. I know I get that. And what also isn't helping for a lot of people right now too is that humans like to be around other humans when we get anxious. And now that's not as advisable as usual. Usually, back when I was, when I worked as a mental health professional instead of teaching, which is what I do now, I used to advise people who were, they whatever they were going through, maybe they were schizophrenic, maybe they were depressed. I used to tell them, I know isolating feels like the right thing to do right now, but it's not. It's really not. Go hang out with people you trust, look into their faces, get that interaction. And now we can't as much, and our brains do not like it.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah,
and that's exactly what happened with, this Andy situation. There was absolutely no way I could be like, well, I'm just going to sit here because I know, like, for my health, because I, as a cancer survivor, I have, one of those compromised immunity things going on. I couldn't just say, well, screw it. I am just going to self-isolate and blah, blah, blah. I felt like, I just felt my entire being, I need to be around other people that are Andy's friends. And that's why we went that night to McElroy's. That's why we went to the wake. That's why we went to the funeral. That's why we went downtown to Shay's after the funeral. And let me tell you, we weren't practicing any kind of social distancing. Yes, we wore masks at the wake and at the funeral. My husband and I did. A lot of people didn't. But once we got downtown to the bar, you're drinking and,
it's hard to drink with a mask on.
It's a little bit hard. And so we were inside, outside, and just doing all kinds of, so it was like, we had to, my husband and I both had to go like, you know what? We know this is risky to do it, but this is our friend Andy. And we can't just not be it. We were willing to take that risk because of the conditions, the situation. And that I would not advise any of you guys to go hang out at bars with large crowds or anything. I would not advise that to anyone. But for us at that time, at this moment, staying home didn't feel right. So
And I that that is understandable. That is absolutely understandable. I mean, not that you need me to understand it. You did for you and you did for your husband what was correct. But if it helps, yeah, I mean, there's only ever going to be one time to go do that, and that was this time. You know, you had to, you chose to balance that risk, and that's understandable.
So let's continue on. You were talking more about the anxiety stuff before I, interrupted you there.
So the so many people, what with working from home, or maybe maybe the person does not have a job that lets them work from home. So maybe they're still going into work, or, which is a whole other anxiety provoking situation in itself. Perhaps, however, they are not working right now. Okay. And what this tends to mean for many people is that time goes weird. You could, if you wanted to, not get up until 11 o'clock in the daytime, in the morning, and if you want to, you don't have to go to sleep until 2 a.m. And that kind of means that one's sleep schedule, one's internal clock, gets messed up. And although it feels good initially, perhaps, it's not good for the human brain to have their sleep schedule messed with. And that too ends up exacerbating any underlying mental health conditions that you might have. But even if you don't have anything like that, messing with your sleep schedule, it undermines one's sense of stability, and it can snowball anxiety as well. But again, it's somewhat difficult to maintain a regular sleep schedule if you're not working right now, or when you don't have to get up and go to school if you're a student or what have you. Humans like routine, and right now almost everybody's routine is being altered in some way, whether it's sleep schedule, whether it's maybe half the people. I have a friend who's she works at home for the elderly, and what with the COVID situation, many of her coworkers are out sick. And so for her, it's a matter of being called in to work double shifts, or having her weekend broken up because somebody else couldn't come in and she's already had it, so she can go in. But it's this whole thing of, well, for her, it's when is she going to get to sleep? Who is going to be there that day? Who's going to quit because they've just had enough? Which happened, and then she had to cover for an extra entire person for a while, right? So there's this whole layers upon layers of uncertainty. I don't want to go too far down any one rabbit hole. I'm trying really hard to keep this general. So there's schedule being thrown off, sleep being thrown off, uncertainty about job, whatever that means for the person. There is then uncertainty about finances, which in our culture today, if you don't have finances, suddenly you're looking at not having several other very important things, to say it mildly. And so all of this would be enough, quite enough, to make most people very anxious. But then add to that that, I mean, I don't have kids, but many people I know do. And they're stuck being full-time babysitters. They're stuck being teachers. There's, they've got all of that. They're stuck having kiddos that are inside all day, which is terrifying. I don't know how they're doing it, to be honest with you. So again, just so many factors that just in itself, just any one of these things would be enough to kind of throw a person. And now suddenly you have an entire globe full of humans who are in the same boat, but apart, you know?
Yeah, those parents, I can't imagine because there's not an escape hatch, you know?
No.
Normally could be like, oh, like my husband would go and spend time with his kids that live like an hour from us and stuff. But with everything going on, he hasn't seen them since all of this went down. And his ex-wife has the two boys, their two boys, and then three other kids. I can't imagine what it's like to the kids are just always there. I mean, you love your kids, but after a while it's like, okay, can I get a little bit of break? Can I get a little bit of me time? And there is no me time for parents. There's anybody, if you have a roommate or whatever, there is no, well, I'm just taking a day for myself because of the situation. But then I do want to
Exactly.
kind of go on.
It's this, there's not balance anymore. Either you have the kids all the time and there's no getting away, or as your husband, you haven't seen him for a month or months. There are people who maybe you dearly like to see who you haven't seen them all year.
Yeah. Or places that you want to go, but you haven't been able to go anywhere because of everything.
Oh, heavens. Yeah.
And then now, I mean, I know here in Houston, I mean, things since where he works, since somebody tested positive and they're closed for several days, because it was first they were going to open up like today, then it was like they're going to be closed for a week, then it's like I think they're going to open again on Wednesday. I don't know, it changes all the time, but legally they don't have to shut down for a particular period of time. But it's kind of scary knowing somebody was there. And I was talking to him about this earlier, is that with being someone who works in a restaurant, if somebody who has eaten at your restaurant and they've gone on about their merry way, 4 days later, they test positive, it's not like they're going to be picking up the phone and calling all the places where they have been to say, by the way, so, the risk goes up with all of that, the risk just goes up being around other humans. Mm-hmm. And it's scary. I mean, it scares me of him going around and doing the whole wine thing and all of that. It's like it's scary. But then again, like I said, we put ourselves in harm's way potentially because of what happened with Andy. But again, we couldn't say no, we're just not going to do that. But there are things that can be your choice. You don't have to go out to a restaurant and eat out. You don't have to go to the bowling alley. There are things where you don't have to do those things. There are things where people are choosing to put themselves in situations that could potentially have a negative impact on them, that they may not even think that could possibly do that. And then you hear on the news, a few days later, 10 people at whatever place tested positive, and that happens. And so it is really kind of like, how is it that we can move forward when we're also kind of stuck in this time warp bubble of the no escape hatch? Just we're all just here frozen in trying to just deal with each day as best as we possibly can and live our lives, even though our lives are not being lived as they used to be lived. If that makes any kind of sense. I feel like I just sounded like a total crazy person.
No, you described it really well, I think, actually. But that's that's the big question though, isn't it? Right? How long can humans reasonably be expected to altruistically and correctly put their lives on hold for? You
Yeah.
know, aside from essential workers, people who can't stay home, people who for a one-time event that really it's either now or not at all, somebody who chooses briefly to venture out, that's one thing. But how does life, I don't want to even say resume, because that would imply, oh, when do we just go back to normal, or what we used to think of as normal, or will normal have to change? And what will that mean? And I know these are more questions, these are not answers, but it I
Well,
wish I
we can
had
have
the
a
answers.
conversation. Because maybe this is something that we do need to talk about because everybody is wondering this, you know? I mean, look what just happened with Major League Baseball. It's like, and I mean, I'm not sporty spice, so I don't know jack about sports. Okay. I mean, my husband has crazy things I've said about sports written down because I was so wrong with it. But I know that they were like, whatever they do for practice for Major League Baseball, and they had to shut that down because people tested positive. And here we are trying to do something to bring back a sport, do something where it feels like, okay, we can now enjoy this. We're not going to be able to be there, but they can play some games or something. We can do that. And it's like, oh, no, sorry, we're taking that off the table too. So it seems like whenever we keep trying to do something, it's just like, bam, you get your hand smacked. It's like, nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. And I think, you bring up the great point of how long can we continue in this without going completely bonkers?
And that is the question. It's the scary question that I think most most of the people in charge have kind of shied away from. And if I were them, I would want to shy away from it too, but I'm not. And so my best advice would be to try to think about ways of how shall I put this, taking control of what you can. And it's not, because again, this is something that our brains like, is a narrative where we actually have some power over our surroundings, which is one reason why this is thrown, again, another reason why this has thrown so many people for a loop, is because uncertainty, and because a sense of powerlessness, right? If I had the power to, of course, I would wave a magic wand and this would be done with and we could get back to our lives. But restoring some sense of control, and that might be very small. In fact, if I would offer advice, I would advise people to start small. Even something as small as, what can I do to improve my living space just a little bit today? And maybe it's just something like, you know what, today I am going to deal with this pile of laundry right here. I'm not going to clean up the entire house because that's huge. The entire house will never be clean. But I can deal with this thing right now. And no, it won't fix everything, and it certainly won't fix the global situation, but completing little tasks, it it helps a person's brain to feel like they've done something. And it's not gonna undo grief, obviously. It's not gonna fix the overall situation. But if somebody wants something that will help them in the day-to-day, little things like, okay, today I am going to take control of this small thing, or maybe these 3 small things. This is what I'm going to do. And then check, check, check. I accomplished these things. Just little basic things like that. People would be surprised how much that helps. No.
I'll give you an example of that, of what my husband has done. Okay, my husband and his dad did this too. He's a list guy. And I'm not talking like just a piece of paper, a list, okay? The dude has every single movie he has ever seen in his entire life on, like a spreadsheet. And he has like the director, he has all kinds of different things. I don't even know what all he has, but he rates all of them. And so he will work on that list. But then he also has, can't even tell you all the different, he has the wine grid, the wine, super wine. I mean, he has all these things for the wine stuff that he does. And so during all of this, he's been able to work on, he also has a baseball list, and then he has baseball cards that he's organizing. He has all these little things that under, quote, normal times, he never has time to do any of these things. He's all, so he's always so far behind in all of it. And what he started doing is deciding each day how long he'd like work on his movie list, and then he'd flip to another one. And, for him, that's been great. And I know probably nobody else out there does these things, but my husband's a bit of an odd duck too. I am okay. I am too, but it has been something that it gave him structure, I guess, is what I'm saying. It gave him structure, and he felt like he was, having progress in something that always felt like it was never going to be, he would never accomplish that. He actually put his energy towards something he's always wanted to do, but never had time to do.
And that is another really great thing to do, although it's difficult. I mean, it sounds like it's not difficult for your husband to have structure, but for many people, it can be difficult to put a structure in place when you don't necessarily have to get up, and you don't necessarily have to go to sleep, and you don't necessarily have to eat at any given time. But setting up those structures for oneself, like for your husband, this is the time that I will spend working on this thing, and this time I will spend working on that thing. Putting structures in place is really good for one's mental and emotional health too, just like the day-to-day type stuff. And yeah, a lack of structure can be very demoralizing. It also has the side effects too of, I don't know if anybody here has experienced this, but I have a couple of friends who have told me, man, now that I'm not at work, I'm not drinking water, I'm not walking around because I don't have a lunch break, I don't have time. I have all the time, but no time to walk around. So I just don't do it. And then it's 10 o'clock at night, and that's no time to do. And so even the little things that they used to do for self-care, eating enough, or eating healthy, or drinking enough water, or getting their steps in for the day, suddenly that all unravels. And that's not good for mental health either. So yeah, routines, make sure you drink enough water, set up structures. All of these are good day-to-day things to do. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. I'm not looking down. I have another screen over here that I'm looking at the chat. But I wish that I had great words of wisdom from up upon Mental Health Mountain. Um, because that's what that's what everybody wishes they could have, and that's what I wish I could impart. But the thing is that it's one thing to be able to tell people, okay, and this is what politicians and leaders would like to be able to do, and this is sort of what they keep doing. They keep telling people, okay, hang on until this date, and then we'll be able to open everything up and do this. And that didn't happen. It was the correct thing not to have it happen, but it didn't. And then they're like, okay, well, we're going to move it 2 weeks back. And that didn't work either. Okay, and then, because it's good to have a set date for an uncomfortable condition to end, right? You can put up with a lot if you know that there's an end date, right? Whether it's 10 minutes from now or 10 days from now or whatever. And so I think that's why they kept trying to give solid end dates. It backfires though, because if they promise an end date and then that doesn't happen, people not only get very demoralized and disappointed, they feel like they were promised something that couldn't be delivered. And then the next time that somebody says, okay, so just hang on until, well, now it doesn't quite have the same alleviating effect, does it? No. And the reassurance evaporates in this giant cloud of uncertainty, which is another contributing factor, I think, for how everybody is trying not to come unraveled.
Yeah. Well, I also think like at the beginning of all of this, if they said, okay, 90 days, 120, if they said something like that, like in January, I don't think the results would have been very, because they gave it in like little bitty bite sizes. And I honestly think that's the best thing to do, because there's only so much that you can handle at one time. And you can be like,
Fair.
okay, so it's that. Okay, so it's that. But now as we're all living in this and we're seeing, like you're saying, like, okay, you're served up one day. Yeah, that didn't happen. Now there's this. I think that does add to the potential for anxiety to go way up, for depression to go way up, for everybody just to continue to feel so out of sorts and not know how to ground themselves. Because I think it can, and I think everybody has a different, just going back to my friend Andy, maybe there was something with all of this going on where he reached his point, he couldn't handle it anymore. And so he chose, to exit stage left. And maybe some of this is people talking about, well, we can't tell them everything, because you don't want to see people respond in that kind of a way, in a massive sort of a way, you know what I mean? Like everybody,
Yeah.
like Jonestown, everybody, let's go drink Kool-Aid because we're just checking out. We don't want that. But at the same time, there's still no answer. And as you said, that's so hard for human beings to live in a constant state of, we just don't know. And we're all doing it. Somehow we're making it, whether it's minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, we're all, I think, hanging on by the skin of our teeth. And at the same time, there can be almost anything that could set someone off. And what did I tell my husband? I'm like, oh, someone can just pop off. I was like, you never know what could cause someone just to snap, I think, under such heightened conditions.
Which is quite concerning, because if we're all, how shall I put this? We live in an objective world, right? An objective reality. But all of us see that through our own subjective experience. And two people could look at the same circumstance and feel entirely different ways about it, right? And one of the one of the cruel things about depression is that it really clouds a person's perception. Even under the best and most ideal circumstances, it's difficult for somebody with depression to see through that really clouded lens. And they might even know, they might even be aware that what they're seeing is somewhat distorted, and it's still really hard for them to do. When things are the way they are right now, things are not ideal. Things are quite worrisome. There's a lot of really sad things going on right now. And it's difficult for even people who do not have a history of anxiety and depression to keep a positive outlook, right? So there is a lot out there that even clouds that lens still further, right? And for someone with a history of anxiety and depression, yeah, it could get very overwhelming very quickly. And so I know I've said this before, but hey, if that sounds like something that anybody here is dealing with, please reach out, please get help. This is not something to let go or to power through. Even if the COVID situation were to somehow end tomorrow, this is still not something just to power through, you know.
Now look to what benefits you have. If there is that telemedicine, look in your community. Is there, a community center that you can go to where there are some counselors or something? I mean, maybe even like some of the grad schools, even if they're doing things remotely, there might be some internships where people are doing some sort of like little counseling types of, I don't know. I'm just trying to think outside the box here. Just, look around and see what sort of resources could potentially be available to you. And because this is the time that I think more than ever, I mean, no time's a good time to just let this stuff go. But with what we're dealing with, we do need to be gentle with ourselves, be gentle with other people, do what we can to take care of ourselves as best as we can and those that we love, even if we're doing that from a distance. And, maybe that's even something people can offer to their friends. And maybe if you live, in the same town with someone and someone is like super stressed or going through a lot of stuff, maybe you could even look up and see what resources are available and offer those to your friend in a gentle, kind, loving way, and not trying to be like, well, I'm telling you what to do. But maybe that would be something, or, post it on social media or do something where I guess you're trying your best to provide some answers and resources for other people if they need it.
Those are really good thoughts. And they're practical too. That's the more practical real world resources and solutions that one can come up with, the better, to sort of combat the abstract uncertainty. And those are really good ideas. Yeah, graduate schools, universities, etc.
Create a Google Doc and put all of that stuff on there so that you can share it with other people. Do something, start creating a list of something, like my husband could make one heck of a list of those resources here in Houston, but, doing something where you can be somewhat of a solution to a very disarming situation. I don't know if that, again, I just don't know if my words make any kind of sense because everything is just so wackadoo. It's like, I don't feel like anything ever comes out right anymore. But, I think also doing something like that, if you can, that gets you out of your own head too. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're not working or, there's things that are going on. It's like, what's something you can do that would be helpful for others that, if you know someone, especially if one of your friends or family members or distant coworkers, whatever, what is something that could possibly help them or other people? I don't know. I just keep always thinking about, how can we do something for other people at this time? And I guess that's one reason why, like me trying to do some of the anti-MLM stuff, which it does get to be very hard for me right now, because it's just like I feel so overwhelmed with everything. But so many people are getting sucked into the vortex of the MLM world, which is very alarming, because probably in a year from now, hopefully they'll find some videos and go, oh, holy crap, did I lose a lot of money on, that thought? Because people are not able to necessarily rationalize right now the way that they can during times when there's not a crisis around every single corner.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? We want to take some kind of action. And, if that action is reach out to a friend, offer your services to make masks if you sew, or create a list of resources if you're a list maker, or put on a remote puppet show for so-and-so's kids so they can have a moment to this, whatever it is that you do. If that's the kind of action you take, awesome. But sadly, people who do not have best interests at heart, like MLM, want to turn that action bias to their own ends. Right now is the time to spend $600 that you really don't have to get a starter kit for the thingamabob, right? You have to work from home anyway. Isn't this the perfect time to start doing that? And it is unsettling. It really is, because I've been keeping up with your channel, others too, who have revealed that in the meetings that they have, what are they called? Power Hour or whatever. That,
yeah, with Beachbody it was Power Hour. Now they're calling it Action Hour or some crap, Like.
In those, they're urging people to, they were urging people to spend their stimulus check on MLM stuff, or urging, taking advantage of the fact that many people are out of work now, et cetera, et cetera. And it's alarming, because when people are uncertain, they want to grab hold of something that looks like it will offer them freedom, or looks like it will be a solution, right? They want to take some kind of action, and this is it. And honestly, if it's a choice between joining an MLM or doing something crazy to your hair, do something crazy to your hair. You won't lose money that way. You'll look a little weird, but you're not going to lose money.
Yeah, I really need to do something to my hair, but guess what? It's like now I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm just sticking it back any which way and don't care. I'm like,
your hair looks fine. Your hair looks awesome.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer or anything. And Chalupa was trying to get in here. And that's why I was looking down earlier, because I had to text my husband, go like, let him in here, because, Velcro boy wants to be by mama 24/7, 365. But I need to take them out and all of that. But I want to say thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's been here. You're beautiful and I love you. And please take care of yourself and take care of those who you love. And, just go out into the world with more love and more kindness for everyone, including the Huns. And thank you again, Ada, for being here. And everybody have a great night, and I'll see you next time.